Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about quantitative research, chapter 5. First of all, let's take a look at our learning objectives. The first learning objective is to define quantitative research and understand its popularity. Second, to learn about focus groups, how to conduct them, and their pros and cons. Third, compare other forms of qualitative research with focus groups. The nature of qualitative research. What is qualitative research? The qualitative research, in fact, is defined as opposed to quantitative research. The official definition is that qualitative research is a research whose findings are not subject to quantifications or quantitative analysis. The research conclusions are not based on precisely measurable statistics, but on more subjective observations and analysis. So, as you can see, quality research is not straightforwardly defined, but is defined as opposed to quantitative research, which uses mathematical analysis and typically using measurable and numerical standards like standard deviation, means, mode, and all those statistical numbers. So to make things a little bit easier for you to understand that qualitative research is not quantitative research in the sense that qualitative research never uses numbers to draw conclusions from the data. So here's a table that summarizes the major differences between quantitative research and qualitative research. First of all, look at the type of questions. Qualitative research typically using probing questions, while quantitative research is limited in its probing. By probing, we mean we typically say, what do you mean by that? Or why do you think about that? So that's kind of probing, to try. For example, you drive a red car, and why do you drive a red car? And they say, well, red car is my favorite color, so why red is your favorite color? You have those probing questions. Well, quantitative research typically is very limited, and it's typically use closed-ended questions. You say yes or no, or many times you have like scales on a scale from 1 to 10, or 1 to 5. So it's very, very limited probing. Then the second difference is that about sample size. And quality research typically use small sample size. By small, we're talking about it may be 5, 10, 20, and usually within like a number 50. While quantitative research, we tend to use large numbers. We talk about hundreds or sometimes thousands of respondents included in a study. And for third major difference about amount of information from each respondent. Quality research, that amount of information from each respondent is substantial, meaning that, for example, in a focus group, we would record their talks and their responses. And also in in-depth interview, that's even more significant per each respondent. Let's say we have a 90-minute interview, and we're gonna record all their words and expressions and transcribe into a transcript. For quantitative research, amount of information typically is limited. If you have 20 questions, 20 questions closed-ended, and then most likely you got people make choices, click, or just make choices for each closed-ended questions, and the number of questions, obviously, if you have 20, then you have 20 answers, and those answers are not open-ended typically, so that the amount of information is usually limited. For the number 4 major difference is that requirements for administration. Quality research requires interviews with special skills. They must be well trained, and So they, you have to be well trained in doing focus groups, in-depth interviews. So it takes lots of experience to really do good job. On the other hand, quantitative research, when you administrate a survey or when you do administrate through online, I mean, you don't really need lots of special skills. Like grad student or teaching assistant, many times can help a professor to administrate the surveys to their students in the study, for example. And next type of big difference, talk about type of analysis, which, based upon definition, we pretty much know that qualitative research is subjective, interpretive, and while the quantitative research is more objective, statistical, summations, and so those are the major difference in terms of its the type of analysis. Next type of difference is talk about hardware. And quality research, we need lots of things. For example, we need a recorder, we need project devices, we need a video recorder, we need a pictures, discussion guides, lots of hardware needed. On the other hand, the quantity research, we just need the questionnaire and many times just computers and or sometimes mobile devices or printouts. Lastly, but not least, is degree of replicability. Now, quantitative research, it's very difficult to replicate the results from one focus group to another, because if you, depending on, even if you have used the same moderator, and different groups may, come up with different ideas, different conclusions. On the other hand, quantitative research, for example, it's highly likely that you can replicate the results. Let's say a survey, if you do a survey, survey the college students at Cal State Fullerton, and you do it today versus you do it tomorrow, samples, are different, but the results will be very similar. So those are the major differences between the quantitative and qualitative research. It's very important distinction. I want you to really study it, especially if you want to on your exams or in your quizzes. So based upon the qualitative research definition, you already figured out just the couple of major limitations. Number one is that attitudinal perceptual belief differences reviewed during qualitative research might not be easily measured, meaning that you cannot really measure the thing because you cannot quantify them. So this is a major limitation for the qualitative research. Number two is about representation of the general population. Qualitative research is often not a statistical representative of the general population because the sample size is small, and it usually is this convenient sample, and so it's very limited. So usually qualitative research can only be used for exploratory purpose, not for definitive action or plan. And also qualitative research lacks its kind of like credibility as kind of expert, because on the surface people think, well, I can be a moderator, or on the surface I can be an interviewer, interview someone, and if you know how to speak the language, if you take how to take notes, pretty much you can do the in-depth interview, but on the other hand, it takes lots of practice, lots of skills, special training to be really good qualitative researchers. So we have the actual video case. I'm not gonna play here because it's gonna make our lecture file extremely big. It's difficult to get it out to online. So on your Canvas side, I uploaded a big video file. It's called Online Dating, and I want you to watch it on your own. Basically, keep this 4 questions in mind, and when you watch the video, to help you learn some skills from this video. Number one is that how did the moderator keep focus group participants engaged? What kind of tricks, what kind of techniques he used? Number two, and what did he do to ensure all participants active? And number three, what other technique did you observe that make him a successful moderator? He did probably 5,000 focus groups, in his lifetime. So that's a pretty good amount of experience. And I want you all to think about what a different moderator or different group produce different data. So this is something about the qualitative research, which is the answer is definitely yes. Now, we look at the focus group. This is a formal definition, kind of a group of 8 to 12 participants who are led by a moderator in an in-depth discussion on one particular topic or concept. So this is a 8 to 12, and I think 12 is the maximum number you can engage, manage a group efficiently, because we're talking about if you have, like, say, 90 minutes time, and if you have 10 people, that's 9 minutes per person. So if you have 12 people participants, it's gonna the minutes of discussion per respondent are going to be reduced. And so look at this topic. Look at again, just think about this stuff. So some of the characteristics, if you look at this, actually there's a picture that's about that particular focus group. It's about, like, I think it's in this video upload is about like 1 hour, but the typical length of focus group is like 90 minutes. So it's a focus group. Some of the characteristics, like, it's for brainstorming, for idea generation, and also try to understand how consumers talk about your product or brand, and also really get into the gaining insights into the underlying motives, attitudes, perceptions, which are not easily to be found from quantitative research. And also you can bring out their needs, likes, dislikes, and also some of the emotional responses during the focus group discussions. The big thing, obviously, talk about group dynamics, and it's like a piggyback on each other's responses. You generate something more, sometimes unexpected, or sometimes much more interesting. We have like 4 steps in doing focus groups. And when we talk about research, we focus very much on procedure, so that we know each individual steps must be followed rigorously, so that we can make sure that the research done properly. First of all, you do the prepare for the focus group, select the focus group, facilities, and recruit participants. You need a group of people, and you need a facility, obviously. And then number 2 is that you need to do that. You need to select a moderator and a discussion, create a discussion guide. So moderator usually, sometimes moderator is responsible for crafting a discussion guide. Other time, you're going to be working with the clients and to come up with a discussion guide jointly. And then you move on to number 3 steps to conduct a group. And number 4 is that to do the report, do instant analysis, and then eventually come up with like a written report to your client. So some of the stuff actually details, like exception for the step number 1. It's like you need to understand focus group objectives, try to use secondary data research to improve your question, to fine tune your questions, or home questions, and then try to make sure that figure out the which focus group facility, and get the people, recruiting participants, which we're going to talk a little bit more. And then obviously step 2, select the moderator. Number 3, conduct a focus group. Generally about 2 hours, and it could be like 90 minutes. It's just the different textbooks actually talk about differently, and then lastly, review and analyze the result, prepare a written report. Okay, so let's look at the participant. How do we screen? How do we pick participants? So participants, actually, some of the tips for choosing participants. Potential opinion leaders are best, because we want to really get people who know a lot about our product, our brand, and a category. For example, if we sell like a bottle of water, let's say our brand is like a smart water, and then we want to those people who are very knowledgeable and then tend to know a lot about the bottled water product categories and maybe are passionate about your brand, like a smart water brand. Number two, obviously, participants must be screened for relevance to the topic. They must be, all participants should be among the target market. And then, the best, has the money or potential to buy your product. Avoid using professional response as much as possible. By professional response, we mean that they engage too much research and then they know too much about the procedures, tricks that typically used in research. So, and then lastly, we need to just to make sure that a screen question, for example, did you have you got involved in participating in a research study, and then say this is a yes, and then say when was the last time you participated in a research study, and also you ask what topic, and if the topic is very similar to your, let's say, water, bottled water, and then you might just terminate that interview, so you move on to pick someone else. Some of the tips and techniques and tools for moderators building a rapport with participants. And the focus group of success depends largely on the skills and the abilities of the moderator. And then, so that's very important. A moderator's role is extremely important in getting the, as much as possible out of focus group. Typically costs, about like $13,000. It's not cheap. Actually, textbook tells you it's very, very expensive. I was surprised actually the recent estimate could be that high. I used to, maybe 10 years ago we talked about $6,000 to $7,000, but now obviously prices have jumped significantly. So choose and pick a good moderator is very, very important. And for moderator, number one is that to smile, to make a connection with the individual. Remember, you recruit those people the new people. You don't know you, and also they don't know each other. And also just build a relationship, get some kind of get a handshake or just have some dialogue. And then just make sure that you have a warm, charming personality so that you can be outgoing and then make sure that they are welcome to this focus group participation. Obviously, you want to be empathetic. Because that's a good way of building connection with the participants. And obviously, remember, be real and don't just sound like pretend that don't know anything about the topic. Just so that authentic, because then that's really it's kind of skill that many times takes a long time to build, and also make sure also that look at some of detail, because sometimes you have like 2 hours in the focus group, or like one behind one mirror focus group facility, and make sure that everybody as comfortable as possible. And obviously we talk about just some of the logistics. If you do need to go to the bathroom, how to get it, where to get it. And then also make sure that you to conclude your focus group discussion, and just make sure that you thank them, and then just make a very make some general comments about the focus group. And sometimes you also need to debrief. If you have anything to hidden or something you need to talk about during the focus group discussion. And also, there's long list obviously here from the textbook. I mean, lots of stuff that details. So I'm not going to go, one at a time. I just want to make sure that those are the guidelines to help you become a better moderator. Okay, there's also detailed stuff that which I'm going to just let you guys just read it on your own, or you can pause during this video and then to see if any question you have. Just they're very straightforward as a matter of fact. So it's now let me talk a little bit more about the discussion guide. Lots of questions, especially when you do a focus group in our class, and the students would ask how many questions do we need, and how long it should be. And typically we need to it's like a film, it's like a script. You need to have like at the beginning it's icebreaker, and get introduce yourself, and also just in general. And then typically you don't go jump into the brand that your client is interested in. So you start with general questions, and if you talk about waters brand, like smart world brand, and you talk about the consumer, the shopping behavior, you talk about the drinks in general, alcoholic beverages and non-alcoholic beverages, and you just narrow down from very very broad category down into like say water, a bottled water category, and then figure out the number of questions. And on this little table, exhibit number 5.5, it talks about, so let's say, like how actually the numbers a little bit misaligned, as you can see, the number of questions. And if let's say you have 90 minutes, and then if you have 15 questions, and then just the responses time is talk about have only 30 seconds, 36 36 just second per question. So it's so you see as the question increases, and then you want to make sure that you don't have too many questions, and that's the point. I mean, if you have a 90-minute, typically 20 question would be 15, or but obviously the number of questions is kind of subjective, because some question could be much more elaborated in terms of responses. Others, if it's yes or no question, it would be simple, easy. So that's and then also I want to make sure that you take a look at the textbook for the sample. I mean, it's pretty good sample. Look at it. Next time when you want to conduct a focus group, just take a look at the sample and then just follow the format. Okay. Focus group lens. Number 4, we talk about review the videotape and analyze the result, prepare report. Okay, so the review videotape and analyze results. The moderator typically they would take some notes, and then we call it also some instant analysis, meaning that as soon as the focus group is finished, the moderator would reflect on the focus group and then write the main findings, the main thing that we had, he thinks that had been accomplished. Instant report is very helpful to capture some of the big insights, if any. Many times we're hoping for a big breakthrough in terms of how do we connect with consumers on the emotional level, and then we prepare a report. Okay. Some of the advantages of focus group that are very obvious. For example, interactions. We talk about group dynamics. This is a place where a group of consumers who are interested in your product, and then can talk about your product vis-a-vis your competitors, and then just in the free flow format, it's going to generate some new ideas and new thoughts to help the brand managers position the brand better. And also opportunities for clients to observe customers, their emotional response, especially how they talk about your brand, which is very very interesting for the brand manager. which, excuse me. So basically, that's also one of the incentive for the companies like focus group because they want to see the real action. And obviously, number third advantage is that they can be executed more quickly than many other research techniques. In the sense that you can pretty much get a focus group together within like a couple of weeks from planning till execution. So some of the disadvantage of focus group, obviously, that number one, the big one is that the managers can be misled instead of informed, because you recruit 10 people, you do a one focus group, and you think you get the big idea, but maybe it's because it's only one group and it's only 10 people. Maybe it's something coming out of that group may not be representative of your target market. That's a big downside. And also recruiting respondents can be a problem because depending on how rigorous when you recruit your respondents, and make sure that you really do your homework, make sure that the respondents meet your criteria in terms of its kind of representation of your typical buyer or typical customer. Number three, talk about the group interview. So group interview, I mean, obviously introduces social interactions among, especially among the moderator with the respondents, and then the social interaction usually creates some kind of undesirable consequences. And so moderator, a different moderator could have generate different results. That's obvious. And if you have a experienced moderator, this person would try to be genuine, try to be empathetic, try to be in the respondent's shoes and minimize their impact on the social interactions. And if a moderator is not careful, and then the participants may say whatever you want to hear. That's a big problem. The results are biased. And then also the respondents themselves might present a problem, meaning that some respondents are much more extrovert. They love talking, and they are very talkative. Sometimes they dominate the conversation, or they unconsciously influence the group dynamics. And then especially if you have half of the people who are introverted, then that's going to be a problem because they're less likely to speak up their minds, and then that's a downside of the like a focus group. Okay, now let's move on to another method called in-depth interviews. Well, briefly talk about the in-depth interviews. I mean, it's like a one-on-one interview, typically lasts like 90 minutes to 2 hours. So some of the advantages in comparison with focus group. Number one, obviously, that group pressure is eliminated, which is, you one-on-one, you don't have to worry about just group dynamic issue, like say, especially the introverted people, they feel more comfortable to talk about their feelings, express their emotional responses, and then also respond to feel important and truly wanted, because then attention is on him. And then also the respondent tend to be much more alert, much more in the mode of revealing their thoughts and emotions, and especially very conducive to revealing of new informations, and depending on how skillful the interviewer is. And then obviously, the more skillful for the interviewer is, the better is able to facilitate the respondents uncovering, discovering their own emotional feelings and motivations. Many times, probably it's latent to themselves. And also, interviews allow the greater flexibility to the direction of questioning, and also the interview can guide the line of questioning uh, much more productively. And obviously, when you have one-on-one, face-to-face interview, you interviewer much more sensitive to nonverbal feedback. People's, if you feel interviewees are tired, or interviewees feel kind of reserved in giving the responses, and then you can just quickly change your strategy. Obviously, we talk about the just the viewpoints are just more genuine, not being influenced by others. It's like not influenced by group things. And interviews can be conducted anywhere, which is you don't have to go to a central location, a facility, and sit there. And then uh, another thing that we talk about advantage is that in-depth interview can talk about the sensitive topics. Even online dating is kind of sensitive, but what about a health issue? What about the uh, like social issues, or like highly controversial issues? That's in-depth interview eliminate the group pressure, which is very, very good to have this kind of group dynamics eliminated in this interviewing process. And the nonverbal communication obviously is a big plus, because interviews can really be much more responsive to nonverbal cues from the interviewees. Disadvantages obviously talk about the cost in terms of money and time. And you do interview like 90 minutes, and labor cost is extremely high. And then number two is that we have no client is involved when you have an interview, a one-on-one interview. And then usually if you do like a 90-minute interview, you probably don't cover as much materials, because the interviews might be wandering off. I mean, and it's probably you don't want to interrupt or cut them short if respondents are really into recalling their memories about the product consumption experiences. And obviously the next one is that there's no group discussion, and so that's the downside of the in-depth interview. And some responder reaction cannot be generated from one-on-one session. It's like a group dynamics, basically piggybacking on each other. I mean, it's spontaneous reactions, and you usually you don't see that in a one-on-one group focus group process. Now let's move on to the next categories of qualitative research, which is we call the projective techniques. Now, before that, I want you to read this sentence, which really touches upon the essence of projective techniques. A man is least himself when he talks in his own person. When given a mask, he will tell the truth, by Oscar Wilde. So this is kind of keep that paragraph in mind when we talk about projective techniques. So the projective techniques are really we talk about like we talk about a projective, meaning that basically those techniques that tap into respondent deepest feelings by having them project those feelings into an unstructured situation. Basically, the idea is that we want to penetrate beneath individuals' ego defense mechanisms. Because each individual has self-esteem to uphold. And when they talk about themselves, more likely they want to present, especially a social setting, like a positive image of themselves. They don't want to talk about the dark side, the side that an unsocially sometimes not a really desirable side. So, but they have this armor built up over their socialization process. I mean, we call it self-defense mechanism. The idea is that if we can remove that defense mechanism so that they can be freely talking about themselves, as if, let's say, that's why Oscar Wilde is like, if you put on a mask, and they say, well, it's not about me, and then I can talk about this, or sometimes it's just you forget about yourself when you are engaging in some kind of games, and which is really some kind of like a game that we hope our respondents would be engaging so that they forget about who they are and then just focus on the situation. And then we get their genuine, authentic feelings, emotions, uh, motives, and many of them actually is even hidden. They themselves cannot even articulate. It actually, this is coming from Sigmund Freud's like clinical psychology. It's like you get into people's mind, and sometimes we say we mess up with people's mind. Literally, we're trying to put them into like sleeping mode or whatever, or hypnotize hypnotize them into a situation that we can let them talk. In our my original culture, I come from the Chinese culture. We have a saying talk about like specialty businesses. Business people tend to want to have lots of drinks, like alcoholic beverages, and then that's basically saying, when you're drunk, you're likely to tell the truth. So that's why how you test friendship or business relationship before beforehand, so that you can know if this person is going to be truthful and it's going to be a liar, and that's very, very important. Now here we're similar, like we use this technique to try to help customers review their true feelings. So, I mean, there are lots of them. I'm going to just go over one by one. It's going to be a little long, tedious, but bear with me. It's very, very helpful, especially those techniques you can administrate them during the focus groups. First one is talk about word association test. This is actually very simple. I mean, it's basic interviews, say the word and respond to what must mention the first thing that comes to the mind. It's like a word association, meaning that if I say if I give you the word, put on say a green, and what comes to your mind, and you will say green, money or trees or anything else that comes to your mind, and so that's a possibility, kind of a free association. Now remember, it's very important the first thing comes to people's mind. Okay. Now usually word association test in the in the situation where market research is conducted, it is often used to select the brand names and or advertising themes and a slogan sometimes. A brand name, I think, is very important. Make sure that especially in this multicultural environment, you don't want to select the brand name has, when you pronounce in another language, especially bilingual, you don't want to have like a negative connotations or negative associations. Nova, for example, it's like no go. It's an automobile brand, and then in Spanish it means not go. I mean, obviously, you don't want to see that kind of situation coming up for brand name. Next, talk about analogy. Now, actually, analogy is extremely powerful, and we as a humanity, actually, we think many times in terms of analogy, especially the ideas are difficult to articulate. What is analogy? Analogy begins to draw comparisons between two items in terms of their similarities. So usually, just it is slightly different from word association test in the sense that we make it a little bit more complicated to tap into consumers' perceptions, attitudes, and about a particular brand indirectly. So I mean, also analogy you can think about, like say we say, well, culture is to people as water is to fish. So we know water is to fish because water is invisible to fish. Culture is invisible to people. So especially if you live in a culture, you are immersed inside a culture. And then once we kind of use the water to fish, and then you begin to see that actually we're cultural beings, human beings, we're different many times because of cultural or subcultures. So that's kind of analogy, the way to think about. And then uh, let me use a concrete example. The textbook use the example when you give you like a list of retailers, Neiman Marcus, Macy's, or Costco, or Walmart, and then think about Ford's brand. Like what's the most similar to the Ford as a car brand. Now, we're not talking about talk about retail category retail, but we're trying to make some comparison. Now, if you say it's an Neiman Marcus, probably people think, well, it's a high end. Or if you think it's a Walmart, then it's like a low end. Now, similarly, I think we're going to use a survey software called the Qualtrics, and we have in the survey making software, we have this Quadrex, SurveyMonkey, Quick Survey. There are many others and free ones. So, and then I always say, Quadrex is a Mercedes Benz of or BMW of cars. I mean, that then you get an idea. Oh, this is a very high end. So people immediately see that you look at the high end, obviously. So that's kind of immediately get people to understand, especially something new. You basically use something familiar to know something new, and then and you keep asking why you think it's like BMW, and then you talk about projects like lots of features, really advanced, really the good experience, that kind of stuff. So you dig deeper as you go along because people tend to use something familiar to express something unfamiliar. Next type of projected technique is called a personification. I mean, we use that all the time and try to compare just a product and a person. And then the product basically is just because we sometimes if it's some new product, we want to make sure that, for example, if you think about a product, like say if it's a car, like for example. If it's a Ford, use the example of Ford, and what would that person would be, so, and then is it going to be, like whatever person that come to that mind, and then draw comparisons. And obviously, when you think about a person, you more like think about personalities, like a Steve Jobs, like Elon Musk, or like Albert Einstein, or like Martin Luther King, and then you have those, or Donald Trump, or just Barack Obama. So all those different kind of those personalities, those beliefs, those lifestyles are vividly expressed. Then you know that people associated with those what brand, with what kind of person. So that's personification. Exactly. It's very very it very very uh, significant beyond actually the analogy, because especially you talk about the comparison between a person and a product. Usually is like immaterial. It's a material, but you personify, you assign human attribute to the product as if it's a real person. Like a person could be a product. It could be warm, could be friendly, could be rugged, could be individualistic, could be just wicked or kind or whatever uh, attributes that you have the product. Next type of a projected technique called a sentence and a story completion. This is a very basically they say, well, we want to tap consumers' perception about a brand. We say, well, Disney is blah blah blah. Disney is what? I mean, let people feeling this. Disney is magic, or Disney is fun, or Disney is uh, interesting. Those words, obviously. And then also, I'll be talking about a complete story. I mean, you can write a story about, let's say, how people love Disney. You can start with let's say a 5-year-old girl, like just Mary loves Disney, and she goes to Disney every single weekend with her parents. And the most, one of the most important places or interesting places she visits every single time is blah blah blah, and then you just complete the rest of story. To tell story, to think about, like for example, the little girls, how little girls think about Disney. Next on the list is called a cartoon test. I mean, this again, it's like a tapping. You can see the ritual is that getting people forget about themselves, project themselves into the situation so that they're more likely to respond. I mean, they're playing this little game, and then they lost their kind of, they forgot that it's a game, but they can reveal their true uh, thoughts. And then, actually they think of the thought from this, responding to that person's, hey John, I finally saved up enough money to buy that new vehicle I've been wanting so badly. I'm thinking about buying a Jeep Grand Cherokee now. And then you look at the scenario and say, well, you respond, say, why would you buy Grand Cherokee? You can buy some other brand, like Tesla, for example. Why Jeep? And then obviously you can keep have this bloopers keep going and it's similar to story completion kind of test. And next on the list is called joy, consumer joy. Consumer joy, and this is where uh, some of the thoughts, some of the feelings are difficult to be expressed verbally, or it's not really articulate, especially some consumers that are good at drawings. And actually, textbook give you example about this cockroach. So the role, I think it's talk about how oh not how the radar, how this cockroach, how this particular uh, insect killer would be just effective in killing all those cockroaches. And then all the target market obviously the women. I mean they are very interested in getting rid of the cockroaches. Roaches are really a pain, so that's why. But then they want to generate insight, how to position that particular brand, and they define some very strong reaction from consumers' drawings, and talk about it's about a, they want to kill the instinct to kill the roaches. So this is something that they get from this just a projector technique. Is very interesting to think about. I mean, you would not be able to get it if you just talk about that, because then it's many times it's some of the feeling emotions you unlikely to be revealed through the words. Next type of projector technique is called a photo sort. Basically, sorting of the photos. I mean, typically just let's say respondent would sort photos of different type of people based upon what kind of product they would use. For example, we would give each respondent a stack of photos, let's say 50 photos, and sort it into three piles. Budweiser drinkers, Coors drinker, and also the Miller Lite. Okay, so we have three different brands, and then all those photos of people, like different classes, different just looks, and then put them, sort them into three different categories, because each particular personality type of people associated with a particular type of just a brand. And for example, you can do some exercise yourself, say which of the following brand would President Obama or President Trump would use. You can have like the car and the beer. What kind of brand of beer would the Obama drink or Trump would drink? What kind of car they would wear? What kind of watch? It doesn't have to be real. It's just what respondent would think they would use. And then actually all those brands have some similar attribute to President Trump or President Obama. Obviously now today, actually we have President Trump and President Biden. If like what type of what type of uh, what type of vacation they would enjoy. Whether it's golf or whether it's a golf play or maybe cruise. So you can use those photos using try to just distinguish one brand, one presidential brand from the another. Storytelling, which is kind of similar to like story completion at the we talked about previously. It's really try to encourage respondents to talk elaboratively about their consumption experience with particular product categories. Like, especially like we're talking about water category, like to how many different brands of water they have experienced, and what they like, what they don't like, and why they like, why they don't like that. This really review tons of information about each brand and its the competitive advantage of each brand. Last but not least, the project technique called third person technique. This is actually used quite often in the situation. Like usually say, especially topic like what would your neighbor do? What most people respond to situation. So you kind of describe a scenario where, let's say, let's say about wearing masks, like wearing masks, and then so you encounter a group of teenagers, just they don't wear any masks, and then what would you do? And you say, well, you're gonna, so you put you on the spot. But if you say, what would your neighbor do in that particular scenario? Oh, maybe you could sometimes say, what most people would do. Now, actually, it's your perception. I mean, most people would reveal their own thoughts, and I'm sure a few smart people, I mean, a few people who really see through this game, they would say, well, I'm going to pretend to be my neighbor, But normally, that's we don't want just those techniques to be revealed. It's like a secret, like a trade secret, and that's why we have to be very careful. We don't want to recruit the professional respondents because they know what's going on. So that kind of like your neighbor would do, would immediately alert them that yes, I'm gonna come up with an answer that's not my own thoughts. So anyway, and all those are kind of, we talk about the project techniques. To think about just this qualitative research chapter. This is a very rich chapter, and our book actually, I think it should be doing like maybe 2 chapters about the qualitative research. But market research is really biased towards the quantitative research, usually because quantitative research typically more definitive, conclusive about what action we should take. So normally, like a qualitative research should be followed by quantitative research, and because quantitative research usually they just serve exploratory purposes and help you to define, clarify issues, and get some insights. So that's why quantitative research, usually it's a much more safe in terms of helping reduce decision uncertainty. All right, so that's all for chapter number 5, and I see you next time.